This is Weather Center. Tropical Storm Francis is making landfall right now between Houston and Corpus Christi, Texas. In Corpus Christi, the weather's not so bad. In Houston, it's a torrent. We'll find out how long this nasty weather will last in southeast Texas and Louisiana here in just a minute. But just up the coast from Matagorda Island, where the center of the tropical storm is making landfall, some of the worst weather along the Gulf Coast is being felt now on Galveston Island, just south of Houston. Our Mike Seidel is there. I just spoke with him just a moment ago. I asked him, Mike, what's it like outside? He said to me, in a word, unbelievable. Mike, what do you mean by that?
Dave, it's one of those sights that you rarely get a chance to see for this period of time. It's been 45 minutes now since the squall moved in, and we've had the horizontal rain, the lashing rain. The road is virtually underwater here on Seawall Boulevard. Cars are just kind of crawling along right now. The winds have gusted in excess of 60, at tops 70 to 75 miles an hour, so hurricane-force wind gusts. And all the land off to the side of the road basically is underwater. The parking lots are underwater, and it's one of those scenes you don't see very often unless you're in the middle of a tropical storm or a hurricane. And the rain is still swirling around on top of the 6 inches we already had.
Mike, we can see what it looks like out there on Seawall Boulevard now, and we noticed the lights on Gold's Gym across the street are still on. Any power outages?
No, we haven't noticed any power out from our vantage point here on the coast, looking back towards the north and over towards the condos, the apartments, looking down the beach towards the hotels. All the power is on here, but I have noticed that most of the power here, the lines are buried. They're underground, and that's probably the saving grace. Also, there's not a lot of vegetation, not a lot of trees that could be blown down on the power lines. But that's a different story inland. Once you cross the causeway, get back into the interior of Galveston County and some of the rest of the upper Texas Gulf Coast, you know, we've got trees getting blown down on power lines, uprooted trees, and again, the power lines are not buried. Then you run the risk of them being snapped. So there will be a lot of power outages, but the bottom line, Dave, is the rain continues. The flooding is only going to get worse tonight, and we'll be back on in the morning at first light to let you know how serious the situation is.
Mike, we hope it's not as serious as it could have been if this were a hurricane. Thanks so much for that live report. Well, I'm joined now by Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. Stu, this has been sitting out there over the Gulf of Mexico now for 2 or 3 days. Now it is moving in. We want to talk about what we're in for the rest of tonight and perhaps the next couple of days. It's been a slow mover.
It has been a slow mover. It's plugged along just quickly enough during the course of the last 12 hours to get the center of circulation very close to the coast. Still moving slowly, though, and we just want to get it inland before it can intensify any further. That pressure continues to drop in the middle of it.
Towns along the coast, such as Jamaica and elsewhere here just to the south of Galveston, Jamaica Beach, have been just swamped by ocean water, by Gulf water. Will that continue the rest of tonight?
We do think that that water will continue to be pushed by the wind, cause the big waves and the net effect of the cumulative buildup of those waves to cause tides to continue to be quite a bit above normal, 4 to 5 feet in some places, maybe even as high as 7 in a couple of spots. So the very high tides which exist now are going to take a while to come down even after the center moves inland, and then we have the strong winds and the heavy rain.
With more flooding in the back bays too. I wanted to pass on a tropical storm. We've got flash flood warnings in effect now. Areas southwest of Houston, Fort Bend County, Brazoria, Matagorda, Wharton, Lavaca, Victoria, and Calhoun counties. Let's take a look at this storm. And you can provide some expert analysis as we head on through. Here is our tropical storm.
It is, here's the center, just about coming on shore. We see the rain extending out a pretty good distance. Been a heavy squall in New Orleans during the last hour with some heavy rains. Here's a close-up of the Texas coast. Get oriented here. Here's Texas, Galveston Island, just about in there where Mike is. He's getting, looks like it's going to be another squall. We have the city of Houston up in here, which has had a rainy night with very gusty winds. We've had a couple interesting features here. We see a little spin in here and in here. We think that that is above the surface of the earth. The wind at Palacios, which is in here, is coming out of the north-northeast. Winds blow counterclockwise around low pressure systems in the northern hemisphere. So the center of circulation at the surface is perhaps just a little bit offshore, but we see these heavy squalls continuing to wrap around with a very heavy rain and wind.
Now, once again, here we are in Houston. This heavy rain and wind is heading right toward Houston right now. So there's no break. It's just raining. Winds are gusty now out of the northeast, up to 40 miles an hour here in Houston. And we'll see at least that kind of weather for the next several hours here into early morning for Houston.
Yeah, Houston will have its share of rain and wind right on through the overnight hours.
New Orleans, same story. Southern Louisiana, we've been swamped. We've had 2.5 inches in New Orleans. A report of tornado damage south of New Orleans. Let's have a look at radar there.
We do see the squall which came through New Orleans right about there, now pushing up to the north there in a bit of a break, but we do see more of these fairly intense cells moving north and northwest.
Okay, now the big question. This storm has been moving slowly toward the Texas coast. The center of the circulation is near the Texas coast now. The pressure is still falling, 990 millibars, but we don't anticipate any further strengthening here tonight. What happens tomorrow?
We think the center of circulation, assuming it gets inland during the next 6 to 12 hours, will continue just plugging along slowly to the northwest or west-northwest. And even though the winds may start to calm down, and hopefully the tides too, then we're going to have to concern ourselves with the ongoing heavy rains.
Okay, so we've got ourselves a problem here tonight for Texas and Louisiana. Only slow improvement at the coast. Still flooding at the time of high tide here tomorrow, right about noontime. And some heavy rain and wind for Houston and flooding to the southwest of Houston here tonight. Stu Ostro, Meteorology Supervisor, thank you so much for your expertise and your help tonight. And we appreciate you checking in with the Weather Channel for necessary information. Perhaps you live thousands of miles away. Weather events like this are certainly very interesting and captivating for us. Check us out online, also at our online address at weather.com. Jeff Marr is in the studio with a look at the rest of the country and Friday's weather for you.
All right, Dave, indeed we are. And really, Francis is the main deal across most of the U.S. High pressure dominating the northeast, the mid-Atlantic, back through the Midwest. Then we get into a trough, which is kind of set up and you can almost pick out a little bit of spin right here in our radar satellite composite. That's helping to pump some more moisture, almost a monsoonal type flow on up through Arizona, Utah, parts of western Colorado, and on up into Wyoming and Montana. A bit of a cold front marking that boundary as well.
The Texas Hill Country now, and there's a lot of wind too, and 3 easily definable bands of heavy rain and gusty winds right in here. 2 of them on the Texas coast and kind of 1.5 here in Louisiana. We've got a tough time. Now we're checking on Doppler radar. This is the Houston metropolitan area right here. Now, Stu, maybe you can tell us what we're looking at right now.
Well, get oriented again.
Welcome to Storm Watch as we continue coverage of Tropical Storm Francis as it is about to make landfall on the Texas Gulf Coast. In this edition of Storm Watch, we'll not only be looking at what's going on, the latest with Francis, but we'll also be checking out what is happening into the rest of the tropics, and we'll take a peek and see if there's anything happening in the rest of the United States. But fortunately, it is fairly quiet. So let's start off with the tropics, and let's get right into the latest details on Tropical Storm Francis. This is the 1 a.m. Central Daylight Time Advisory from the National Hurricane Center, putting the center of Francis about 30 miles northeast of Port Aransas, Texas. Very close into the shore now. Top winds of 65 miles an hour, most of those to the east-northeast of the center, so blowing in toward Houston and reaching over even as far east as into the Louisiana coastline over toward New Orleans, mostly offshore though. It is drifting northwest, and the central pressure has been dropping somewhat over the last couple of hours as of 1 a.m. at 991 millibars. Tropical storm warnings are still posted anywhere from the mouth of the Pearl River all the way down the Gulf Coast over to Tampico, Mexico. As even though we're saying the center is coming ashore, here in the Texas Gulf Coast. Remember, tropical storm force winds extend for hundreds of miles in some cases away from the center of circulation. So just because the center is nowhere near you does not mean that you could not be experiencing tropical storm conditions. You could be. Here's what it looks like on the satellite picture. Notice the dense convection, the ball of convection here moving ashore here between Houston, reaching down in toward the Corpus Christi area, the higher cloud tops, the heavier convection, and we have seen quite a lot of rain and wind in this area. Very easy to see the circulation here close to the Texas Gulf Coast. Much of the rain with the system actually on the north and east side of the storm. Notice not very much at all as you head down on the southern side of the system. So unfortunately to the north of the system lie Louisiana and the Texas Gulf Coast. So this is definitely a soaking rainstorm, and we are still seeing squalls, heavy rain, thunderstorms coming ashore here anywhere from Houston and Beaumont on down to Palacios and Victoria, and it's starting to work its way inland now into places like College Station and Waco. Looks like you'll be seeing the rain overspreading your area over the next several hours also. Farther to the east, New Orleans, seeing more showers and thunderstorms coming across your area, also toward Lafayette and Baton Rouge and over into the Lake Charles area. So please batten down the hatches. We will have more coverage and more details on what's happening with Tropical Storm Francis coming up in just a very few minutes, about 7 minutes away at the top of the hour in Weather Center. Let's look at the rest of the tropics now. We've talked about Francis. Let's see if there's anything else out there that we should be worried about. Fortunately, the answer is pretty much no. The Caribbean, fairly quiet. No problems at all, and no development is expected here over the next day or so. So let's leave the Caribbean, hop eastward. Here's the Leeward and Windward Islands, Western Atlantic, nada. Virtually nothing out there. No real convection except for a little bit here in the intertropical convergence zone. No problems at all. So we're okay here for the next couple of days. In the eastern Atlantic, rather, we do have a fairly broad cyclonic circulation here in the eastern Atlantic, but there's no convection with it. As long as it's convection-free, we're not going to see tropical development out of it. The convection farther to the south here, coming off of Africa on the monsoon trough. Let's jump from the Atlantic now to the eastern Pacific, where we do have another tropical system, tropical depression Javier. Top winds 30 miles an hour, nearly stationary, centered 170 miles south of Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, at the tip of the Baja California Peninsula. As you can see on the satellite picture, though, very hard to pick out. Not a lot of circulation, so not really causing a problem, but still could cause some gusty winds in for small craft close to shore. So please be careful. Boating interests along the shores of Mexico and around the southern Baja Peninsula. Back here in the United States, pretty quiet in the eastern United States, high pressure in control. A few showers and thunderstorms along this front could be on the strong side, and definitely be watching for isolated tornadoes with Tropical Storm Francis coming ashore. We're looking to the southwest, just a few showers and storms around, nothing much to speak of. A little farther to the north, pretty much the same story, some showers and storms in Colorado, and watch out for some showers and storms across the Dakotas.
Hi everybody, I'm Dan Deerdorf. Where would you go for a home equity loan? Let's ask.
Well, banks have the best rates.
But banks only lend money when you don't need it.
Advanta National Bank is different. They lend money to people when they need it.
Right. With my credit?
They made their first loans 45 years ago to teachers who had trouble borrowing. They helped out when others wouldn't.
This is a bank, right?
With customers who get the flexibility only a national bank can offer, right over the phone.
Got to move all your accounts there.
Nope, just call Advanta. One of their loan specialists will show you how to use the equity in your home to pay off all of your bills. Get one low monthly payment and save hundreds of dollars a month, plus a tax deduction.
You'll wait for some board to approve.
You'll get fast approval over the phone. And your money in about 10 days. You don't need to have money in the bank to get money from a bank. To get the loan you want.